Okay, I'm just gonna try showing some of the adjustments on this deck. It's on my Rider 155. If you have a Husqvarna Rider and it's not a 155, it might be similar, I guess. Just kind of look, see what you got. So of course you got the lever here for dropping the deck, and that's done with that chain. If you can see that right there, it's that chain right over there. Hope you don't get dizzy watching that. But yeah, once that chain drops the deck, I mean, it drops the wheels to the ground. The rear is suspended, of course, by that hook back there. So there's not really an adjustment to this. I mean, it just goes down to the ground. One thing that will affect your ride height are the condition of these wheels. I replaced these before this season started, so you notice it has a little curve to it. Sometimes they get really worn out where they're actually just flat. I mean, they're just really worn out, and you have to either, well, you can replace them, or you can try adjusting the deck. But I think the best thing to do is, just keep the wheels in fairly good shape. But that's my dollar, I guess, not yours. The other adjustment then, with the deck dropped, that is the adjustment lever, of course, right there, and ultimately that's pulling on that bar or that rod right there. But that's your deck adjustment. That's making the deck go up and down. And like I say, it doesn't really matter about the frame. Once the frame is down, that's it. Its job is done. So the adjustment is done with this bar right here. When you actually drop that down all the way mine's adjusted anyways, that bar will actually just pull right out of that loop right there. And of course, that's so you can remove the deck. If you've ever wondered, that's what that guy's all about, that spring right there. Even though it's way back here, it's just so you can disassemble and take off the deck. So if you have it adjusted, like mine, if you were to go down to the lowest position, that could just pull out when you're mowing. So it's got that little spring, and you can see it does a pretty good job of just holding it down in that hole. So that's what's that about. And then this other bar right here, you notice, just bolts on right here. There is an adjustment to it, and then it bolts to this the rear bar right back here. That's parallelism. That's to keep the deck, well, level, or actually Husqvarna wants the front of the machine down a little bit, so you can just measure, right here and right here, the back edge of the deck to the ground. Especially concrete, of course, would be best. Get it on a flat surface, and you should be just a tad bit, maybe like 1/8 of an inch, I think is what it is, lower in the front. And that's what that does. You adjust this, and that makes the deck angle forward and back by connecting this front and the rear bar. That right there, I don't know if I could demonstrate it, but when you take the deck off the machine totally, this bar, you would have to pull up. That's what that handle is for. You just step on the wheel here, pull up on that. It'll raise the deck separate of the frame. This bar will come back, if I can grab it, and then just drop it in that hole. And that's so if you move the deck around, if you don't have this connected, it's actually going to be dragging the bottom of the deck. It's not really going to hurt anything, but it's kind of a bear. I've had to do it a few times where I didn't have that in there right, and I was in a hurry. But yeah, if you just take this, raise up the deck a little bit so you can hook it in that hole, then the deck is suspended, or the deck shell is suspended off the ground a little bit. So that's what that is for. The adjustment that I've been talking to different people about is way back here. So you just imagine, again, the loop is just to connect everything together. So ultimately, this is connected to this bell crank right here. So when you move, if you can see me move it, move the adjustment lever up, it's just pulling back on that. So you can imagine when you're pulling on that this is your adjustment point right here. So all you got to do, there's the top and the bottom nut. I was just in the process of tightening this. I didn't realize that had creeped down that threaded rod right there. But no, that if you tighten this one so that the rod is going up, then that's pulling on this bell crank more. So that's your adjustment point right there. If you want the deck higher, just tighten that. Well, you'd have to back that one off, of course, so you got the space, and then tighten up that upper nut, and that'll pull up on this rod, and then that's going to be pulling up on this a little bit more, so your deck will be higher. So if you're not happy, if you think your cut is always too low, just tighten up that nut. That's your adjustment point right there. And then when you pull back on the lever, then you're having more of an effect. And you may have to pull up on this when you have the deck separated. You may have to pull up on the deck on that handle just a little bit more to get that reconnected. You know what I mean? Because that's going to be further back. But that would be the only downside. And it really, once you're pulling up on it, to hook it up there, I guess it doesn't pull that hard. Once you got it raised up, it's not that big a deal, I guess. But I guess the only other thing, since I'm doing this video, these springs back here, you've heard the term ground pressure. That's what the ground pressure, that is just counterbalancing when you do drop the whole deck down, like into the mowing position. There's only supposed to be a certain amount of force. I would have to read. You just use a scale, like on the front of this bar, and weigh and see how much ground pressure you have up here. And that's how that's adjusted. You would just loosen up the lock nut right there, and then tighten or loosen that. Just set it to spec. The thing is, you want to have both sides the same, so you could count these threads. That'd be a little bit tedious. I just get a veneer caliper and just measure from the bolt, from the tip of that bolt. It's an eye bolt is what it is, to that nut, just something so you're sure that both sides are pulling about the same. But that's the other adjustment: your ground pressure, your parallelism, and then the cutting height right there. So I guess I've talked about this long enough. If you have any questions, I guess I'll have a comment section, right? So go ahead and ask any questions you might have.